Welcome to my weekly review. Thank you for tuning in. Today is Saturday, June 14th. You survived Friday the 13th. Once again, no black cats crossed your path, but the Nasdaq did pull back just a little bit, 1.3%, or 255 points, 5% less than the volume, which is skewed by these penny stocks. So we're going to forget about that. It essentially pulled back to its 10 EMA here on Friday. And kind of an expected move, after this, grind higher, off this V-shaped rally. We had a 27% correction, and now we're rallying back up on this V-shaped attempted rally here, which looks pretty good. A lot of people can't figure out, if it's an uptrend or, market direction and stock selection is how we are successful in the stock market. And some people can't figure out this is an uptrend, and they're really tied to the news, the financial news or the headline news, which, if it bleeds, it leads. So it's always going to be negative. So you got to turn that stuff off and just look and see what the leading stocks are doing. I'm going to get to the leading stocks in a minute, but just wanted to point out that the indexes were down yesterday, including the Nasdaq. Closed just a tick below its 10 EMA. No great shakes, no big deal. If you look at the weekly, you could see this V-shaped recovery, much like we had in 2018, 2019. I'll get there in a minute. But it had a couple of strong weeks here after this big move, jump of 7%. It had a, quiet inside week, pull back a little bit. And now the last 2 weeks we rallied 2% and more and 2.18%. So you got to expect, a little bit of a pullback to relieve the pressure at some point. And last week we were down 123 points or 0.63%. Not a big deal, totally expected. If you're not watching the news, you're going, oh yeah, we ran up a lot and we get back a little. Totally normal. Totally expected. Might even get back a little more next week. Who knows? But the trend is still higher, and there's still a lot of leading stocks, and that's the pond that I want to fish in. I'm going to get there in a minute. Just wanted to show you a little bit of the SPY here, which was, down a little bit last week, 0.36%, but still, I guess I'll go to the daily. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to switch over to the S&P 500 index because it was above 6,000. I said this is probably going to be a little bit of resistance here, that 6,000, that big, large psychological number. It got above it earlier in the week, 6,043, 659, 645. And then on Friday, closed below it at 59.76. So that's going to continue, I think, to give a little bit of resistance here. That's all short term, of course. Longer term, we know this thing's going higher. This one closed just a tick below its 10 EMA. What do you mean it's going higher? Well, because it has for years and years and years and years. I think the Nasdaq started in 1971. It's just been, a straight up, climb, and it's going to continue to do that. And if I was young, I would just keep piling money into the indexes every month, month after month. Have your discipline, sock that money away, let it grow, and collect your dividends or do a drip account. But this is a swing trading site. So I'm going to stick to some of those leading stocks that were swing trading. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, not an index that I look at a lot, down nearly 2% on Friday. And then the other one is the IWM, which is down as well. The small caps had a nice little run, hit that 200, and then was rejected. Now, hopefully, it'll find support there at that 21. Close just a tick above it. All right, that's enough of the indexes. I got to get to these stocks, and these are not stocks that I like or trade because they're overbought, overloved, and they've treated you well for years and years and years. And I get it. That's they're big, massive companies, but not that's not why I want to. That's not what I'm looking for in a stock. I want growth stocks that are going to rally. Of course, those are more risky and more dangerous, but Apple had their developers conference, no great shakes there, down nearly 4% last week. Microsoft, on the other hand, it's got a 3.5 trillion market cap now, breaking out of this long consolidation from July 5th, the week of July 5th last year. So it's been, more than 11 months here, going on a year. And if you look at the daily chart for Microsoft, you can see that it's just trending along its 10 there. So not bad. And then NVIDIA, the next largest company at 3.4, almost 3.5 trillion, trending higher now, getting in a nice trend along its 10 EMA, pull back to the 10 on Friday, closed just a tick above it. But yeah, those are some of the stronger names in the lag 7. You can see it's been consolidating, kind of like Microsoft for a long, long time. We can go back here to, yeah, last June. So it hasn't really gone anywhere. Last June it was 140, nearly 141, and on Friday it closed at 140, 197. So that's why we look at weekly charts, not just concerned with the daily wiggles. Meta actually looks pretty good. I mean, for a company that's being, well, I guess the case is closed now for the FTC, but we'll have to see what they have to say. It was down 2% last week. Meta Platforms, pull back to its 10. One of the stronger names in the lag 7. Amazon, I like the setup here. Cup with handle, pull back to its 10. That one might appear on our ready list again next week. It didn't do anything last week. It was down with the index, 0.69%. Google, another one that the chart looks pretty good here. You can see on the weekly, consolidating in a base. It was up 0.5% last week. And yeah, just pull back to its 10. And then last but not least, Tesla. A lot of noise around this one, a lot of drama. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. It was up 10% last week. What was the news? I forget. I don't know. I'm not interested in these stocks, but they do move the indexes. Still 33% off of the 52-week high, which, a lot of people got excited after the election. And then, oh, I know what it was. Tesla, I don't know. Something about the White House did something favorable with the robo-taxi or something. Anyway, and Kathy Wood put a price target on like $1 zillion. So anyway, that's it for the lag 7. I'm out of here. I've got to go to the earnings reports from last week. And Casey started it off. Casey had a nice response to earnings. And I'm going to switch to the 5 now because I'm going to get to the leading stocks after I do the earnings reports from last week. Earnings season winding down, had a few stocks last week, have a few more this week. And so we're just going to be trading on news, I guess. Anyway, Casey General Stores, nice gap up on earnings on the daily. It was up 11.5%. Give back very, very little on Friday. And there's your nice breakout of that flat base pattern there. Very nice. 14% move for Casey. Of course, the big kahuna last week was Oracle, which reported this is 600 billion market cap company. And yeah, and that's a nice breakout from that base. Stage 1 base, as this base undercut prior bases, up 24% with massive volume. That's a move not to be ignored, Dan. I thought Oracle would carry the entire software sector, but it wasn't to be. A lot of software names sold off as we had kind of a risk-off market towards the end of the week. RH reported and had a nice move. Obviously, this is like a Jim Morrison stock, been down so long that it looks like up. Still closed 5% of that daily range. No bueno. It's still up 7%, but trying to emerge from this stage 4 decline. You can see it had its, if I switch here, it had this little base, had little, advanced phase, had the little stage 3, can't go any higher, stage 4 decline. Now trying to get out of this stage 1 base area and head into a stage 2 advanced phase. So we'll keep an eye on RH. And the last one was Adobe. Not a bad report from Adobe. That usually they kind of, drop the ball, but down 6% last week. You could see a pullback to a moving average. Ooh, not a good response to their earnings report, down 5% with volume, which pulled back to it looks like it's 50 there. So maybe it'll find support. Adobe looks like it's just in purgatory. Yeah, it's in that stage 4 decline in the stage 1 base phase now, trying to emerge from stage 2. Man, that thing's got some work to do. That's just an avoid for me. All right. I want to get to some of the negative stuff first and then finish on a positive note here. I have to admit when I'm wrong and when things are not going right and when your leading stocks are cracking, you need to be flexible and nimble and make adjustments. The market's all about being nimble and quick. As William O'Neill said, there's the quick and the dead and we don't want to be dead. So I want to get to a couple stocks that I've had on our leading stock list and our relative strength list. This is AppLove, and it's been a monster. I mean, if I just go here for the last year, it's up 370%. I think we'll all take that. However, it's forming this little base here, and it did not get into the S&P 500, which I think a lot of folks were anticipating that move. And so, it had like a little bit of a tantrum. You think stocks have characters? Of course they do. And this one is a little baby throwing a tantrum in the corner here. So we're going to have to put this one in timeout. But one of the leaders is cracking here. It's down 13% last week because it didn't get into the index. So I always say index inclusion is not a good reason to buy or sell any stock. We want stocks that are doing this, that are showing us some, earnings and sales growth, and that's what App 11's giving us. But right now, it's adios muchachos for me because in an uptrending market, a stock slicing the 21. I don't want anything to do with it. I sell it. I can always buy it back. If it wants to go to its 50, just say, like last week, I sold it right there at the 21 as a slice. What was it? 375 or whatever. If it wants to take a trip to the 50, that thing's at 325. So you're saving yourself 50 bucks, if you buy on a bounce off the 50. If that scenario occurs, just take it one day at a time. But I'm just trying to show you right now some of the negatives in the market, some of the leaders cracking here. App 11 certainly is one of them. Duolingo, kind of like this little pattern here as it rallied, breaking out of a base, just forming this little ledge pattern. Now it's sliced its 21. So for me, you could see the 5 is slicing, trading below the 21. So that's adios muchachos. And for a leading stock, that's not looking too good to me. It's down, what, 3, 4 weeks in a row here and slicing its moving averages. Last week it was down on big volume here. So this week we have OpEx on Friday, so we'll have to see what happens. There's going to be plenty of shenanigans on the week ahead for sure. Dutch Bros, stock that I had on my radar list this week, it was a bomb. I had some winners. I had 6 winners and 6 losers, and that's just trading. But they had 3 presentations the prior week, and I thought, last week they would get some upgrades and some love, but no dice. I don't think this thing's going to really get some love until it gets to New York. And they've been, West Coast, Oregon, California, Southwest, Arizona. They moved through Texas and then now Georgia. The CEO said they had, grand openings at these stores in Georgia and Texas. So massive welcoming, massive sales. Their food sales are like 2% already of their overall sales. I mean, they did everything but raise guidance and no love for these guys. I tell you, if they were a New York-based company like Shake Shack, I don't know, they'd probably get a little better love here. Shake Shack, not a lot of growth here, 10%, 8%, but it's got a lot of love from the Wall Street folks in New York. Dutch Bros, no dice. It's got more sales, stronger sales and earnings growth, and not getting any love here. So anyway, we'll just have to wait and see on Dutch Bros. Longer term, I think once those Wall Street slobs get to go to Dutch Bros, get to see the demographic, get to see their operation, I think they're going to go back in and support this stock. But for right now, eh, I mean, it's up off the lows pretty nicely, but I'd have to call that one a laggard. So that one's, sliced to 21, adios muchachos. Same with TGTX, was a leader for a while here as it rallied up to 46, had a negative response to the earnings. So it's just another leader that's faltered here recently. Rubric had a nice earnings report, but it was sell the news event. This thing needs the base, and just another one of those leaders that stopped leading. Hims and hers, this one's just kind of squatting at the 21. I don't really like that. It's got to bounce and move, and it just cannot bounce. Got a lot of short sellers in there. So it's another one that I'm not really thrilled about. Dave's not home. Dave's not here. Pulled back, on Friday, and a lot of people are saying, well, SEZL did the same thing and then it bounced. Well, I'll wait for the bounce. Sure, SEZL pulled back to its 21 on what, Monday or Tuesday? And then bounced nicely and closed near the highs of the session. That was a buy sign. Now it closed Friday right there, a little bit above its 5. So that's the leading stock above the 5. That's what you want to see. Dave's not here. I don't know if it'll bounce. Maybe on Monday it'll pull back to the 21 and bounce like a mother. But you just gotta wait, until it does. Let it prove itself. Always allow these stocks and indexes to prove themselves. Netflix, pull back to the 21. It was leading above the 5 here for a long, long, long time, and now starting to falter. So this is the stuff that I just want to point out. I'm not saying it's doom and gloom or anything. I'm just trying to point out Some of the leaders have been cracking. Now others have been stepping up. Some leaders fall back. Other leaders step up. This is ASTS. I know it doesn't have the earnings growth profile that we like, but this one had a nice week last week. I had this on our ready list, and I hope some folks got a hold of this. Yeah, very nice, 23% move, breaking out of that base. Midland, Texas company. You see Landman, reminds me of Billy Bob. This is my Billy Bob stock, and it's soaring, although it's not an oil stock. All right, I got plenty of oil stocks coming up. ATI, this is a steel stock, and this is what swing traders like to trade, right? A stock that's just quietly, nobody talks about it, tight trading, just minding that five, right? Um, It closed 1.1% above the five on Friday. So even though the markets were wobbling on Friday, this one was showing relative strength, up a percent, much like ASTS. There you can see the breakout and the move higher. So that's the type of stocks I like. I like stocks going up. I don't like stocks going down. If you've been following me at any time at all, just try to keep it really simple, right? CLS, another leader. It pulled back 4% on Friday. I'm not thrilled about that. Closed right at its five. So we'll have to watch that one next week. CRDO, this one had a nice response to earnings and then pulled back a little bit, undercut the five, but closed above it on Friday. I kind of like this name, Internet Network Solutions stock. Yeah, nice. It kind of looks like the index there. We'll see if it can make new highs above 86.69. Okay, another one. One of my top holes. I know people say, "Man, I went from 55 to 166. Get rid of it." I think this is going to make another move higher. I showed you the eBay comparison a couple weeks ago. It's just making these, higher lows. It's holding. I know that, yeah, on Friday, it's down 1% with the index, but last week, where the index was down, this thing was up more than 5%. So, yeah, I have a hard time selling something like that. It looks like a leader. It looks to me like it wants to go higher. So until I see a sell sign, I'm going to hold on to Core Weave. CW, defense name. I got plenty of defense names, obviously, because of the conflict in the Middle East. This one was actually down on Friday, but had a strong week in that uptrend, grinding higher with the five. Another stock nobody talks about, up nearly 5% last week. Groupon. This one is another one that's just grinding higher. You could see up 3% last week while the index was down, just minding its five. LEU, this is another one with the Alternative Energy Group, which is a very strong group, top five group, surfing the five here. The LEU is a Centrus Energy, yep, 13% last week. Thank you very much. Like I say, this is the pond I want to fish in because they're showing relative strength. LMB, this is an HVAC company, up nearly 2% last week. Again, in a stock that nobody talks about, had a nice week and just grinding higher with its moving average. Lemonade, let me see here. Pull back to its five on Friday. A lot of stocks were weak on Friday, so if you had a stock that was up, that was definitely showing relative strength. Still up 1.5% last week, while the Nasdaq, all of the indexes pulled back. So that one's showing relative strength. NBIS, this is one that I had on the ready list earlier. The prior week, 2 weeks ago, last week, I took it off because it was a little extended. Still, it was down 2.3%, but still well above its moving averages. So that one's still on our ready list, right? My guide is the 10. This one is what, 3.3% below the five. So that will be one to watch next week. Needs to bounce. If I wanted to switch back to the 10, I'm sure it's probably like squatting there at the 10 on Friday. But I don't want to do that. OKLO, another one that I had on the ready list last week, had a nice move. Then, after the move, they announced a $400 million stock offering. Didn't get hit that hard with the offering, still up by 27% last week. Another one of those leaders. Palantir, just grinding higher. Yeah, up 7.5% last week. Broke out of this cup with handle pattern. Another one that I had on the ready list. So I had some winners last week along with those losers. And that's just part of trading. Roblox, nobody talks about Roblox. This is a strong software name. I think it's going to hit 100 and just kind of meet some resistance there at 98.15 was the high last week, up 1.5%, while the Nasdaq scuffled. All the indexes scuffled. SEZL, I showed you this one earlier, had that little glitch on Tuesday, but then rallied back up. Yeah, I think that was just a buy opportunity, up a little more than 1% last week. Who else do we have here? STRL. This is a building infrastructure construction stock trading above the five. Okay, making this little, well, probably needs a little bit of a handle here. 1.46%. It was down last week. Yeah, maybe a few more days. Looks like it's flagging here after a big move. Whoop. Now it's doing this little flag here, which I don't mind at all. Trade tight, flag, trade tight within that base before you break out. I'm okay with that. TEM, this is our Nancy Pelosi stock. It really rallied prior to, Donnie Tariff, doing whatever he's doing. Then we had the Liberation Day, and it's kind of looking like, the index a little more wild, but, trying to reach those new highs at 91.45. We'll see if it can get there. It's got those little David Ryan ants. TEM up 15% last week. Thank you very much. TMDX, another one that's kind of quietly just grinding higher within the base here, up 3%. Stock that I like. Yeah, we like stocks that go up like that. TPC, this is another one of those building in heavy construction stocks. A lot of them are doing well. Tutor, I don't know Tutor and I don't know Perini, but I know Tutor Perini's doing well. Had a little slip on Friday, 1.5%, but still up nearly 4% last week. So like I said, this is the pond I want to fish in, these strong stocks. TTMI. Up 6.5% last week. Electrical contracting manufacturing stock. Man, yeah, pull back to the five on Friday. We'll see if these things bounce next week. The deal is if the conflict escalates, those commodity stocks are going to do well. And if the calms down a little bit, then maybe our growth stocks can rally once again. So it's been a headline, driven market in 2025, unfortunately. VRNA, this is a biotech, medical biotech. Most of the drug stocks have been murdered in 2025. This one is an anomaly. It was up 9% last week. And then ZLAB, this is another biotech stock that is based in China. But man, this thing breaking out, up nearly 8% last week. Just acknowledging strength here, pull back nearly to the five on Friday. Closed 1.3% above it. And then Zscaler. This is one of the leaders in that cybersecurity space with CrowdStrike, Rubrik, which I showed you earlier. This one's struggling at 300, just forming this little ledge, a flat wedge. A flat wedge is a ledge, right? Just pulling back, letting the five catch up here after a big move following earnings, having some trouble at 300, but I believe, one day it's going to pop above 300 and that will be looked at in the rear view mirror. That's it for those leading stocks and the leading stocks that have faltered. The earnings last week, the lag seven. So I don't have much else except for what to look for next week. If we continue to see, escalation in the Middle East, yeah, it's going to be news driven. And these are some of the, defense stocks that look to benefit DRS, Leonardo. I'm just going to go through these quick because I'm not, if it de-escalates, these things are going to go down as fast as they went up. RTX, ESLT, another defense name that popped Friday. Who else do we have here? MRCY, mercy me. Breaking out from that base here, the weekly review. So we'll look at it on the weekly. Yeah, up 6% after hours. I don't know. Maybe there was news of more rocket launches. Who knows? People going crazy. All right. The gold stocks. I put this one on my ready list last week and it popped nearly 11%. Now, like I said, if this conflict de-escalates over the weekend and into next week, these things are going to come down. These oil and gas and commodity, gold, defensive names. But that one had a great week last week. If you got a hold of it, thank you very much. You did very well. AEM was up 5% last week. Wheaton Precious Metals, another one of these Commodity gold mining plays from Canada, of all places. The silver did well also, PAAS, Pan American Silver, and the other one was MAG, Mag Silver, last week. Yeah, nice breakout and moving higher. So the commodities, and I did mention the oil and gas. I put a bunch of them on here. I'm going to go through these quickly because, like I said, these are probably going to go down if, oil calms down, if the conflict calms down. But it was up 6% last week. What else we have? AR is another one that I like in this group. Pop bigly on Friday. You can see that cup with handle pattern on AR. CRK Comstock. Yeah, it was up nearly 4% last week. Range Resources up 7.8% last week. So yeah, nice breakout from that base pattern. FRO is another one. Frontline, yeah, nice pop. But like I said, if you're buying this and if things de-escalate and oil goes down, this thing's going to come right back down to the 200. So just know that going in, you're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to be nimble. You're going to have to be quick this week. And it's all based on news, unfortunately, and not on the earnings and sales growth that we like to. Here's Shell just rallying hard off that low. They got liberated, went from 58 to 72 with big red numbers here. But just acknowledging strength, and it's up nearly 7% last week. All right. I did mention drugs, and even in war or conflict, people need their drugs. All right, people on medication. So I would think the drug stocks would do pretty well in this type of environment. ALNY there, that loan looks pretty good. Looks almost like a 3 weeks tight pattern, not quite. Trading above that moving average though, which I like. Trading tight within a base, near a buy point, just a tick above the moving averages. I like that one a lot. What else do we have here in the Acro? Yeah, that one looks pretty good too. Yeah, just a nice little wedge here pulling back to the moving average. So let's see if it can break out next week. What else do we have in this? Oh, INSM had a FDA approval and it rallied in response to the approval on volume. And anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up, except for in honor of the great Steve Jobs. I have one more thing, and that is next week we do have some earnings still that could move individual groups. This is Lennar. It's one of the bigger, 29 billion market cap home builder companies. So we'll see what they have to say. They're reporting on the 16th of June, which is what, Monday? I think this week we have an off day too. Juneteenth was a Thursday, I believe. So you got to make note of that too, I believe. I got to get my facts straight. Jabil or Jabal Circuits, JBL, they report on the 17th. So looking forward to them. And then on Friday, we have Kroger, which is still consolidating here. We'll see the food, the inflation in food. We'll see how that, what they have to say. And then we have Accenture, which is a software name out of Europe. We'll see what they have to say. This is a well, headquartered in Ireland. But yeah, this thing's been kind of beaten up, trading below its 200. Computer tech services stock. What else do we have with Accenture? Oh, DRI reports Friday morning. Darden, the restaurant stocks really been hit and miss with restaurants. There's been some real stocks getting hammered in that group and others that have held up okay. And then KMX reports Friday morning. This one's been murdered as well. All right. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up. I will have some stocks on the ready list that I like. You're going to have some that are defensive names, like I showed some defense, aerospace, some commodities, gold, silver, oil and gas stocks. And you're also going to have some growth names, that look okay, that I kind of like, including, a Dash, Vertiv looks okay, Net looks good, but these things are going to sell off if that conflict escalates and there's more murder and mayhem and bombs away in the Middle East. So you're just gonna have to play it by ear. It's the best I can tell you. Another one that I showed you earlier that I like is CRDO. And even yeah, I'm gonna stop there. I have a bunch of names, but like I said last week, I had six winners, six losers, and six on the watch list. There's some stocks that I like that are set up in bases, but that doesn't mean they're going to work. So, you're just going to have to be nimble. You're going to have to be quick. And thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up. Have a great weekend.